Sometimes a simple question gets a really powerful answer. And that's exactly what happened recently with cultural commentator Charlamagne the God. Today, we're going to break down his take on the huge disconnect he sees in American politics and why he thinks it matters so much. So, where did this all come from? Well, it started during an interview on ABC's This Week. The host, Jonathan Karl, asked Charlamagne a question to get his thoughts on the last year in politics. Seemed simple enough. The question was basically, what surprised you most on the political front this year? And you're probably thinking, okay, he's going to talk about an election, some scandal, maybe a new policy, right? But nope, his answer went way, way deeper than that. His answer? It wasn't about a single event. It was about an attitude. His biggest surprise, he said, was the lack of respect for the working class. And for him, that wasn't just some talking point. It was the launching pad for a much bigger critique of how Washington works. Okay, so that's a pretty big claim, right? So how did he back it up? What's really crucial here is that his criticism wasn't aimed at just one party. This wasn't a Democrat or Republican thing. He framed this as a total system failure, a problem with the entire political establishment. And he didn't just leave it at that. He got specific. He pointed to two major events from the year that, for him, were perfect examples of this disconnect between the people in power and the people they're supposed to be serving. First up, he mentioned the DOGE cuts from early in the year, a move he said literally ruined people's lives. And then you had the government shutdown in the fall, which just threw thousands of federal workers into chaos. Two different events, but for him, they told the exact same story. And just so we're all on the same page, when he says DOGE, he's talking about the Department of Government Efficiency. The whole point he was making was that the cuts from this agency had these massive, real-world consequences that the political class just seemed to be, well, completely ignoring. So you take those two examples, and it all boils down to this one core belief for him. He's basically saying that the people in power are fundamentally out of touch with the day-to-day struggles of the people they represent. And this is really the key to his whole argument. He shifts the conversation away from all the high-level political jargon and brings it right down to earth, to the real, tangible, human cost of these decisions. You could really hear his passion on this when he was on his radio show, The Breakfast Club, during that government shutdown. He put it out there, plain and simple with this plea. It's a powerful message, right? These aren't just political games. They have life-altering consequences for real people. And what he was getting at was the immediate danger here. He made the point that for a lot of these federal workers, missing even one paycheck isn't just an inconvenience. No way. It's a full-blown crisis, because so many folks are living paycheck to paycheck. And he got super specific about it. He's talking about rent, childcare, car payments, light bills. The stuff that doesn't just pause because there's a standoff in Washington. That's the stuff he argued politicians were completely overlooking when they were having their debates. All right, so the interview then pivots a little bit. The host asks him to point out a success of former President Trump. And just like his first answer, this one was, well, it was not simple. So what'd he say? The border. He acknowledged that, if you just look at the numbers he'd seen, it seems like the policies did what they were supposed to do, reduce the number of people crossing. But, and this is a big but, that was only half the story. See, this is where it gets really nuanced. He puts the success of the numbers right next to this deep concern about how it was done. He was basically asking, is the result worth it if it creates this climate of fear where people could be snatched off the street? So it was way more complicated than a simple good job or bad job. It was about weighing the results against the methods. So when you put it all together, the critique of how the working class is treated, the focus on real-life impacts, and that really nuanced take on policy, it all points back to his main idea. There is this huge, fundamental disconnect. And man, this next quote just wraps it all up. For Charlamagne, the big political surprise of 2025 wasn't really a surprise at all. It was just confirmation of something he feels he's always known, that the system just isn't set up for people who are struggling just to make it day to day. Which really leaves all of us with the same central question he's putting out there. It kind of makes you stop and think, right? Is there a disconnect between the politics we all see on TV and the actual lives we're all living?